Good morning. Okay, good morning. Good morning, morning, everyone on the platform. I just wanted to say that we had a challenge with the Honorable Chair, but he has just logged in. Thank you so much.
Thank you. There are a number of members who are stuck outside the platform who can't log in. So, yeah, if you can, let's just make sure that we can open for all of them.
I'm
okay, they are not on the lobby at the moment, but I will be waiting to admit them as soon as they relog in.
Okay. No, that's perfectly fine.
Recording in progress.
Good morning, honorable members, and to the leadership of Eskom and the work that we've got to do. What I will then request that we begin doing, as this is a crucial briefing that looks at the issues that speak to where Eskom is at, I will then request that we make sure all the members are in. So Mashile, may I request that you check and make sure that members are in the platform so that we just take a quick register.
Granted, Chair. Good morning, Chair. We have got all the members except for Honorable Hanyani, who has just tendered an apology. So we are ready to go. Chairperson. Chair.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mavani. I think let's just proceed. Honorable members, first of all, thank you so much for making time available. Let me, on the outset, mention a number of things. The first is that we had to move this meeting to a virtual platform inherently because the meeting was scheduled to be at the Eskom, at the FFC's board.
Chair, we've lost you. Chair. Apologies for the glitch. I'm going to try to check if I can get hold of the chair. Hi, Chair.
Seemingly, the system kicked him out.
Honorable members, I spoke to the chair. He's got a challenge with the network, but he'll be logging in just now. Sincere apologies for this. back.
My humble apologies, honorable members. Mr. Maubani, can you hear me okay?
Yes, you are loud and clear. We can hear you.
I truly apologize. We are having technical difficulties, and I'm a bit baffled by what the connection is doing. But let me resume again, and I apologize to honorable members in this regard. As I stated before, that we'd wanted to convene this meeting at the FFC's boardroom, but as a function of difficulties of size, it then became difficult, and the unavailability of venues in Parliament, we moved our schedule to move meetings to the virtual platform. And I appreciate members' flexibility in this regard. I felt it was absolutely important that when we look at the various legislation that have been presented before us, no one can dismiss the fact that Eskom is an important entity of that. Tomorrow, Parliament will vote on the fiscal framework, but today we look at where Eskom is at, its state of liquidity, some of the issues that have been raised by municipalities and the debt levels, and ultimately, as an economic enabler, Eskom is at the forefront of that. And therefore, honorable members, I want to urge that in this engagement, we really engage strongly and ensure the fact that we can hold accountability. In the light of that, on the agenda this morning is really the presentation by Eskom and then the 2 sets of minutes that we have to consider for the day. May I ask if there's a member who will, maybe Mashile, if you can present the agenda before us there today. May I request if there's a member, given that there are no adjustments to the agenda as presented today, is there a member who could move for the adoption of the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I'll move. Honorable Douglas.
Honorable Douglas, thank you very much. Is there a member who can second the adoption of the agenda?
Yes, Chair. Happy to second that.
Thank you, Honorable Bateman. With both those then being duly adopted, I want to take this opportunity to welcome members, welcome the leadership at Eskom. May I request Mr. Maubane, if there are any apologies, if we can note them now?
Thank you so much, Chair and honorable members on the platform and dear colleagues. We do have an apology from the Deputy Minister of Finance, Mr. Serupen, who will not be able to attend our proceedings today, as well as an apology from Honorable Khanyane, who is on examination leave. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Maubane. Are there any other apologies from members that we should be aware of? May I also take this opportunity, honorable members? Prior to the budget cycle, I'd agreed to do a presentation that will resume shortly at 11 a.m. It will be a short presentation, and then I will rejoin the meeting. It is genuinely simply because of the change in schedule as it speaks to the budget processing. I have requested Honorable Galega Mazibuko to then will chair the Q&A session if we are not at that point or as we go, and then I will rejoin the meeting. So I felt that it was important just to let members know in that regard. We just had to make sure that there was a possibility to be able to do that. So I want to thank members in that regard, and I want to thank Honorable Galega Mazibuko for being able to step in when we need to do so, and then I will reconnect the meeting, but then I will be in constant communication. With all that business then out the way, let me welcome Eskom Holdings. Let me thank the leadership there for the work that they do. Let me first of all say that we acknowledge the levels ultimately of load shedding and the reduction thereof. I think it would be unpatriotic of me not to acknowledge the incredible work that Eskom have put in regard, seeing us with the least amount of days of load shedding. But equally so, we face profound challenges, the challenges of load reduction in certain communities. We face profound challenges of ultimately the extensive use of diesel. We face challenges of the transitions in terms of energy, and ultimately municipal debts and how those impact the fiscal situation at Eskom. And we are, as the Appropriations Committee, obviously looking at the Eskom bill and in terms of how we restructure the debt in regard to that. So no, today's meeting could not be more important. I'm going to welcome the team. I'm going to allow you to take us through the presentation. Let me say this up front. Members have been sufficiently given the presentation. So it would not be crucial to cover every aspect of the slide. I always like to say to members, stick to the bones, stick to the meat of the issue. The members have already got the bones. So let us use the presentation as a guide rather than as a read shop so that we can really invest a sufficient amount of time in engagement. This is a crucial engagement, and therefore, with the leadership of Eskom, I also want to state upfront that as a committee, we take displeasure at in some way some of the apologies I've been getting from the Ministry of Finance in terms of their attendance of our meetings. I'll certainly be taking up that issue. I'll write to the Ministry of Finance to make sure that the leadership there is represented in such meetings, especially today. Let me, without wasting too much time, welcome the leadership of Eskom. Hand over to you.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, Honorable members. My name is Caleb Kassam. I'm the CFO. Honorable Chair, I just want to firstly apologize on behalf of him. He's unable to attend, and our CEO is busy in a parallel with Select Committee on Agriculture and on Land, and some of the members are in another portfolio committee. Honorable Chair, if I can ask, I'd take the lead from your direction. If the Secretariat can share the presentation, and I'll direct the Secretariat on which slides to focus. I will be covering the first part in terms of the strategy, the finances, our corporate plan. And Honorable Chair, I'm supported by two of my colleagues, Rajan Naidu, who will present the municipal debt. He's the General Manager of Finance in Distribution, and Mabue Mapaka, who is the Senior Manager in charge of energy losses. He will be taking the committee through that section. So we won't do slide by slide. We will focus on some of the key slides. And as you said, Chair, let's get to the crux of the issues. So if we can just put it in presentation mode and I can proceed. And then Honorable Chair and members, I'm also supported by our Treasurer, Kabelo Masike, who's going to help us with some of the questions specifically relating to the debt relief. If we could move on to the next slide. Can continue. Slide 4. Thank you. One back, please. One back. Chair, you asked an important question here. Where's Eskom going in terms of its direction, etc.? And I think first and foremost, we appreciate the need to transition towards cleaner technologies. And in Eskom, we are, from a board perspective, supported by our minister. We want to also participate in terms of clean energy projects, in particular looking on the renewable side to enter into and to deliver about 6 gigawatts of clean energy projects by 2030 as Eskom. Obviously, there are sufficient opportunities for the IPPs to also play in the renewable sector going forward. And these energy projects also includes the importance of battery storage. Chair, you mentioned also the importance of the transition, and as the older stations do come to an end, we've learned lots of lessons from Kamachi that we need to decouple the repurposing and the repowering of the older stations as we do replace them. So the biggest lesson there is we cannot afford to shut off an entire station. We need to do it unit by unit as we simultaneously then transition to the cleaner technologies at these stations going forward. It doesn't only affect the megawatts and the capacity on the grid, but also the communities that are so instrumental in ensuring that those power stations continue, and more importantly, to support those communities. I think importantly, we also need to take into account the distributed energy resources going forward. That does contribute to the capacity of the grid. Chair, what is also important, we know baseload is critical to the stability of the supply and the energy mix for the country. So whilst we're pursuing renewable technologies, etc., going forward, we're also investigating and researching the need to look at clean coal technologies in terms of our existing stations. And a lot of work is going into that. Like our Honorable Minister Ramagopa says, it's about an emissions problem and not a coal problem. So we are exploring options to reduce the emissions from the existing stations, because baseload is critical. Chair, you will see one of our key challenges is that how do we deal with the issue around municipalities, including the metros, from a finance perspective, the importance of collecting what Eskom does supply in terms of the product that contributes to our financial sustainability and liquidity. And importantly, from a board perspective and EXCO, we are driving to ensure that an ethical culture is embedded in the organization, and we need to also be agile going forward, bringing into account the use of technologies across our value chain in all the businesses going forward. At the end of the day, we also need to improve our customer service and our customer-centric solutions in terms of what we do deliver to the customer. And whilst exploring this, especially when we go beyond the debt relief window, Honorable Chair and members, it's important to embrace public-private partnerships in helping release the pressure on our balance sheet, not only from a funding perspective, but as we expand our projects going forward, we also need support in terms of execution abilities with these public-private partnerships across the generation projects, as well as the transmission TDP in the form of the independent transmission projects going forward. We also believe there's opportunities as we look to roll out some 7.2 million smart meters across our distribution environment. If we go on to the next slide, thank you, Chair. Just some of the other issues that I may have not covered in terms of that overall slide. I think at the end of the day, it's critical that we also deal with the emissions issue going forward from a sustainability perspective. And then ultimately, like you said, Honorable Chair, we've had some recent incidences of load shedding. We do apologize for that, but we are focused on supplying the needs of the country, and we've taken lots of learnings from what has happened in the first quarter of this calendar year. If we then move on to the next slide, I think that's basically just giving a bit more detail to what is required across specifically setting ourselves up in terms of a competitive future for the industry. I think importantly, we have, as part of the unbundling journey and roadmap, we have operationalized the National Transmission Company of South Africa on the 1st of July. We know there's a need to deliver an energy market code and then a wholesale market going forward as we move forward into this industry. I think what has also come through in recent ratings reviews that we've had, we mentioned S&P, but also recently Fitch has seen the positive recovery for Eskom, not only from an operational performance, but also in terms of the financial outlook that we do see, that I will then touch on in a few later slides, on the back of the debt relief support that we have and the better operational performance that has come through specifically on the generation sector. I think, Chair, importantly, we must also ensure that we don't forget about the just energy transition, not only from an Eskom perspective, but from a community perspective, to ensure we don't repeat the mistakes of what happened at Komati. More detail will be explained around municipalities and our distribution agency agreement going forward. We also need, from a distribution perspective, as we go into the future, to look at electric vehicles, infrastructure to stimulate as a catalyst the e-mobility environment in South Africa. We move on to the next slide. Yeah, this is just highlighting that when we assess what happened in the few events of load shedding in this first few months of this calendar year, I think what we have agreed as management and as a board, that we need to reinforce the systems, people, process mindset. And where additional support is required, we do seek that and have the support of the board. We're also working with the support from NECOM to ensure that we continue on this trajectory of supplying that stability in terms of the electricity requirements of the country. Importantly, we've also initiated further leadership development focus across all levels in the organization to ensure that there are necessary pipelines to deal with the future leadership requirements. I think we've also from a process perspective ensure that better discipline around the procuring of some key spares that are required to ensure that when it gets to outage time, it is executed timeously. And then those procurement and processes around spares has a specific attention and focus, in particular from the generation environment, and also overseeing by our board subcommittee around business optimization in terms of our subcommittee that is chaired by Mr. Clive Leroux. If chair, then I go on to the next slide. Just as an outlook in terms of performance, where are we looking to take our energy availability factor? We ended FY25 on average at 61% for the year. We know currently, Chair, I think it's sitting around 57%, and we really need to increase that over the remainder of the year to get to this average of 66%. And in that, we aim to increase that to 70% as a long-term sustainable level of energy availability. We believe at that level we'll be able to meet the needs of the country in terms of reliable supply. Obviously, as part of our operational requirements and our efficiencies, we've got a lot of focus on cost optimization and revenue enhancements. And then also looking that at the end of the day, as I mentioned before, improve our internal controls to address fraud, corruption, and criminality. And then also the importance of making sure that we do focus on skills and reskillings as we also transition and introduce more cleaner technologies into our mix as Eskom going forward. If I then move on to the next slide, Honorable Chair and members, I think it's just the headlines of what is required in terms of the transmission development plan up to 2030, 6,600 kilometers. Over a 10-year horizon, it's closer to 15,000 kilometers of lines. And you can see similarly significant expansion required on the distribution network as well, 6,000 kilometers by 2030 and 3,000 MVAs in distribution by 2030. I touched on the smart meter 7.2 million rollout that is required from a distribution environment perspective. We go on to the next slide. Here, I think a lot of this I have discussed. I think also we must make sure that around the environmental requirements. There is compliance and all our necessary mitigations that we're putting in place to ensure compliance in terms of environmental requirements. I can then go to the next slide. Now, if I touch specifically from a finance perspective and a capital outlook, this was our Q3 results and headlines. We see, Honorable Chair and members, on the back of the better performance. We do appreciate that in FY26, this financial year's FY25, apologies, that on the revenue side, we were up 16% on the back of a tariff increase of 12.74%, also showing that with the lower load shedding, our sales volumes did increase by 3.6%. And whilst we did this and the better performance from the generation fleet, it also meant that we had a significant savings on our total primary energy costs by 17%. The main contributing factor being the lower open cycle diesel plants that were run at much lower load factors and resulting in significant savings in the financial year of FY25, ultimately culminating to an EBITDA growth of almost doubling from 44 billion to 86 billion based on Q3, and then an operating profit that we do see there of 59 billion compared to 18 billion the same time in the previous year. We do see, Honourable Chair and members, that with the benefits of the debt relief, our net finance costs is coming down as we don't borrow during this cycle, and we do see that benefit filtered through in terms of the finance charges. Ultimately, at the end of December, we'd only drawn down 8 billion from the current year's allocation of the debt relief of 64 billion. Honourable Chair and members, the remaining 56 billion was drawn down by the end of March 2025. And at that point in time, our total borrowings was sitting at just under 410 billion, down from the 430 billion. If we move to the next slide, please. Thanks, Chair. Chair, this is an important slide and the crux of our financial sustainability. I think I touched briefly on revenue security and enhancement. That is a combination of the tariffs and the tariffs recovering your efficient operating costs and giving you the recovery of your cost of capital. I spoke about our own cost efficiencies, and you will see in the corporate plan that we've signed off. We've signed off that we need to take out on an efficient, sustainable basis over the next 5 years, 10 billion per annum from our cost base as Eskom. And obviously, we'd always look to see if we can do more without affecting the long-term operations of the business. Around the balance sheet, Chair, the debt relief, you will see in a later slide, that has had a tremendous benefit for us, not only from a cash flow and a funding that we don't have to borrow, but more importantly, it allowed us to release 3 years CapEx in advance for the business to do what is required to secure the spares and to plan much more appropriately rather than a stop-start basis. Our biggest concern, Chair, and you will see when my colleague Rajan presents, the biggest challenge is the municipal debt, including metro debt, that has been growing despite the initiatives by National Treasury, and we'll elaborate more on that. I think the crux of this is that we need to arrest this arrears, because if we don't do that, Honourable Chair and members, it's going to neutralize the benefit we do anticipate to receive from the overall debt relief that we have received over this 3 years, including this last tranche on how that was settled and announced by the Minister in the budget. If we go on to the next slide, I'm not going to spend time on the next slide because I've spoken about a lot of these issues. we just go on to the next one. Yeah, just an outlook in terms of the 3 years based on our corporate plan. We do see our EBITDA growing from 90 billion in FY26 to 109 billion in FY28. Similarly, you can see that benefit come through in the profit outlook, growing to just under 48 billion in FY28 from a profit perspective. EBITDA margin remains relatively stable around 25%. Importantly, that you see from a cash perspective and a governance perspective, that our cash interest cover does increase, and it reaches our threshold of where we'd like it to be at around 3.5 and above. So I'll just touch on the next slide before I hand over to my colleague on the Munich debt. Yeah, the gross debt securities on our balance sheet with the debt relief, Honorable Chair, you do see, we do anticipate that coming down to 334 billion. At a high a few years ago, Honorable Chair, we were sitting very close, around 485 billion rand worth of debt on the balance sheet, which we couldn't service ourselves without the support of government. Debt service cover ratio, you also see in this horizon getting to a target that we would like it to be of 1.5 to cover the capital repayments as well as the interest repayments. That then puts you on a positive position without the need to be reliant on the fiscus going forward. And importantly, that is where we want to be as Eskom, that when we do go back into the capital markets, which we are forecasting around 2028, when we would need to raise money, as indicated on this slide, around 2028, we would need to go back to the capital markets to raise some 25 billion rand. And in the latter 2 years, although it's not here, but in our corporate plan window, we foresee and forecast a need to repeat the 25 billion for FY29 as well as 30, effectively a 75 billion need to go back into the market to deliver on our operation and our capital requirements. In doing that, we believe that we will maintain our financial ratios. And then as you can see from a return on assets, yeah, it gets to about 9% using a historic book value valuation, but it's not at a sustainable level that we would like it to be, which is much higher, around the 16%. Chair, we could go on to the next slide, just the last one from my side, and then I'll close off and hand over on the Munich debt. Next slide, please. Yeah, just indicating some 322 billion of capital expenditure over the next 5 years, split across our value chain of a lot of increase in the National Transmission Company of South Africa as we roll out the TDP, but also including that maintaining the existing infrastructure and catering for some introduction of new technologies on the generation side, and then a significant rollout of smart meters for distribution. My last slide, Chair, is around the debt relief that we've received on the next slide from government, not only in this last 3-year window, but more importantly, the previous year. I think cumulatively over time, it's just under 500 billion of support. And you can see that as per the debt relief as we have it now, in FY26, the last tranche of the 3 years will be 40 billion. And as per the Minister of Finance's decision, there will be, as we revise the takeout of 70 billion to 40 billion in FY26, which effectively is used for maturity on the 2nd of April of 2026 of some 40 billion. And then another 10 billion in FY28. I think, Chair, that's basically the phasing. I just want to reiterate here we've used the debt relief for the purpose as intended, to pay down our debt requirements and needs, capital and interest. It was not used for operations. We do provide our necessary reports to National Treasury to assess. And then obviously on a quarterly basis, whatever tranches are received 1 quarter later, we do then request the National Treasury to approve that conversion of the subordinated loan into equity. To date, all our tranches have received the permission to convert into equity, Chair, per the Debt Relief Act, as was stipulated. I will now hand over to my colleague Rajan Naidu to take us through some key feedback on municipalities and metros, and close off with Mabuye on illegal connections. Thank you. Rajan, you can sit there.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. As mentioned by Caleb, I'm Rajan Naidu, General Manager for Finance for the Distribution Business Unit. And I'll take the committee through an overview of where we are with municipal debt and the challenges we are facing. Before I get into the slide, I think I must mention that municipal debt is a key risk to the Eskom business and our liquidity. As you know, that distribution collects the money, but then pays that on to transmission and generation. So the problem is not just a distribution problem, but an Eskom problem on the whole. In terms of the first slide in front of you, I thought it's important that we cover the timelines and the actions that we've been pursuing over the last decade to try and get the municipalities to honor their payments and to reduce the debt. And very quickly, as you will see, we started in 2015, where National Treasury invoked Section 216, subsection 2, to actually withhold funds that it would have paid to the municipalities. Then in 2017, we...
Mr. Kasim, I don't want to disrupt you. The public broadcaster has requested that you maybe just adjust your screen slightly so that they can capture you properly. That's great. We can proceed.
Is that better, Chair? Is that fine, Chair?
Yeah, that is. Well, if you can just, well, I'm not the technical people. I just wanted to let you know there was a message on the thing, but you keep going and then you can keep adjusting as you go.
All right, thanks. Yeah, so from 2017 right up to 2023, we have granted many concessions in terms of suppression of interest on outstanding debt. And you will see, that the interest suppression that we would have charged amounts to about 16 billion. We also went to the extent of reducing our interest in terms of overdue debt, in terms of prime plus 5 to prime plus 2.5%. And then obviously, most importantly, I think in 2023, we were hopeful and we participated in the National Treasury Debt Relief Program in the hope that this would promote a culture of payment from the municipalities going forward. But I will touch on that in a bit more detail on a few slides down. Can we go to the next slide? Next slide, please. It's not changing on my side. Okay, thank you. If we can, yeah, thank you. So in terms of municipalities, what we are seeing in terms of issues that they are struggling, which obviously results in their inability to service their current bills and reduce their debt. The municipalities are also plagued with high energy losses in the sense that energy is either being stolen through illegal connections, meter tampering, or inaccurate billing. There's also a decline in demand, so obviously revenue dropping, and then obviously poor financial management. I think electricity is probably the highest collection in the municipality, and that a lot of that money is being used to cross-subsidize other expenditures within these municipalities. Then obviously shortage of skills, both technical and commercial, and then low infrastructure investment. Obviously, there's not enough, I would say, free cash available to then invest into maintaining the current infrastructure as well as expanding the infrastructure. And in most cases, what we believe is most of the municipalities have unfunded budgets where the revenue doesn't cover their costs that they need to incur to run their municipalities properly. And what we also see is the electricity business is not ring-fenced as required. Next slide, please. Thank you. On this slide, provides an overview of our payment levels as well as where we are with Munich debt. I'll start with the graph numbered 1 to your left upper. And you would see that it's split between what we call municipalities and non-municipalities. So non-municipalities would typically be our small power users and our large power users. So you can see that our collection rate there is practically 100%, sitting at 99.8. However, when you look at the municipalities, if you look at from 2021, there's been a steady decline right down to where we are currently seeing levels of collection at 87%. Even though the National Debt Relief Program kicked in from April 23 onwards, we didn't see a improvement in actual collection rates. Instead, we actually saw a decline to the extent that it provided municipalities with some protection, because municipalities that were put onto the program, Eskom had to stay on in terms of any legal actions that we were pursuing or any other actions that we were taking, and allow them to participate in the program and to pay our current bills, hopefully over 12 consecutive periods. And if that was done, they would get a third write-off in terms of the actual debt. If you look at the graph titled number 2, you would see the steady growth in terms of the outstanding and overdue debt. Currently, we are sitting at 99 billion. And you can see, from 23 onwards as well, we've seen a rapid growth, a much faster growth in terms of municipalities defaulting. In graph 3 there, we've highlighted the top 5 debtors in terms of outstanding debt. If you can go to the next slide. So this covers the National Debt Relief Program. So just in summary, 71 municipalities were approved. And right now we are only sitting with 10 compliant municipalities. The sad situation that we find ourselves in is that even municipalities that were approved did not even honor their current bill, some of them from month 1 of the program. So it's only these 10 municipalities, if they are compliant in terms of how the program works. If they pay us for 12 consecutive months in terms of the current bill, they'll get a third write-off in terms of their outstanding debt. However, you can see that the debt has grown 15 billion, from March 23 to April 25, just on the 10 non-compliant municipalities. If you can go to the next slide. Okay, so here we are just outlining the debt that's sitting with the metros. As Caleb mentioned, initially we did not have an issue with metros in terms of payment. Yes, there was some debt outstanding, but they would generally pay us late and would catch up. But over the last, from March 24 or March 23, you can see that the debt has grown from 1.7 billion to 11.1 billion. The biggest outstanding debt is sitting with the city of Tshwane and the city of Johannesburg. However, I must say, through the efforts of the teams on the ground, with City of Tshwane, we do have a payment plan in place, which covers 5 years, and thus far the Metro is honoring the payment. Just about 2 weeks ago, we did sign a payment arrangement with City of Johannesburg, which would be over a 4-year period. We have given concessions in terms of no interest being charged on the capital to allow the municipalities to at least pay off the capital going forward. Next slide, please. So here we just broke up our total debt between the different customer categories, and you can see municipalities, including the metros, makes up the bulk of the 99 billion outstanding at 94.6, and small power users at 1.9 billion, and large power users at 1.1 billion. With the large power users, some of the disputes are with Transnet, which is probably the bulk of it in terms of the outstanding debt. Next slide, please. Okay, yeah, in summary, we obviously this covers in terms of our debt management strategy. Obviously, our objectives are to stop municipalities from defaulting, prevent municipalities that are paying us from defaulting in the future, and obviously to reduce the current debt that's outstanding. And that's done through our credit management processes, legal intervention where we go through the courts, limiting service provision to the notified maximum demand in terms of power purchase agreements entered in with the municipalities, and then active partnerships, which I will cover in a bit detail in the next slide. And then obviously working with government and asking government to support us in some of these programs in getting the municipalities to buy in and try to pay us. Next slide, please. So, Chair, I just want to spend a little time on this. The distribution agency agreement is something we believe is quite critical and will help with the issue of debt recovery and sustainability of Eskom as well as the municipalities. Basically, it's an agency agreement in summary where we step in and take over the running of the ring-fenced electricity business. The objectives is obviously to improve the revenue collection for the municipality, and obviously that will prevent further arrear debts in terms of growing debt to Eskom. Skills transfer and capacitation of these municipalities and their staff in order to provide sustainable local services. Just key principles, the business has to be fully ring-fenced. The license still sits with the municipality. We act as an agent. If we can also assist, there's an array of services that we put out there in terms of we could assist with infrastructure and capital rollout. However, the funding has to come from the municipalities and will not be funded out of Eskom. We do the billing and revenue collection, and that's ring-fenced into an Eskom account where we would pay our current bill and then disperse what's left from the collections to the municipalities, and also assist the municipalities in looking at their tariffs and their tariff settings, where in some of these municipalities, some of the problems lie. And what we are really seeking, currently the distribution agency agreement is a voluntary participation agreement. We have marketed this to many municipalities. However, the uptake is very low. And what we believe is with government support, we're hopeful that this can be made mandatory, that defaulting municipalities are then made to participate in this distribution agreement, partner with Eskom where we can step in, assist them to get their municipalities to a sustainable level. And the idea is for us to then exit out of these municipalities and not to stay there permanently. If you can go to the next slide. So Chair, this is just in summary, of support that we require in assistance to support the interventions. And like I mentioned, for non-compliant municipalities with overdue debt is the mandatory adoption of the distribution agency agreement, or to move these municipalities to prepaid supply so they are able to control the expenditure in the sense that they can buy electricity that they've got the money to pay for from an affordability point of view, or look at direct payments from municipal customers to Eskom. And obviously, a last resort is license revocation, and that's part of the national anti-debt relief program, as one of the conditions is the voluntary application for license revocation to NASA if they don't comply with the program, if they've been accepted into the program. And then obviously holding the municipalities accountable in terms of honoring their debt to Eskom. And in terms of other considerations is the direct payment of the equitable share to Eskom directly, as opposed to paying the municipalities, and then Eskom has to then claim that money back from the municipalities. In a lot of cases, we actually don't get, we aren't able to recover that money from the municipalities. And then possibly to look at increasing the FPE from 50 to about 200 kilowatts. We believe that would help with reducing losses and theft of electricity. Thank you, Chair. That brings me to the end of my presentation. I'll now hand over to my colleague Mabue, who will take us through illegal connections. Thank you.
Morning, Chair. Good morning. Morning, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members. My name is Mabue Mapaka. I'm going to be taking you through the illegal connection problem that Eskom is facing. When we look at electricity theft and illegal connections, this continues to pose a very serious financial and operational risk for Eskom. We need to do a lot to make sure that this are actually kept. When we look at illegal connections, they emanate from a number of areas where people connect to our networks without permission. Our networks are designed in such a way that we actually look at the number of houses in an area, and then we design the network that way. But then if people then come and connect illegally on that network and then start to pose your overloading on that network, then the transformers burst, transformers burn, and then we have a serious issue. So we need to then make sure that we can actually manage this going forward and make sure that people are connected properly and they then pay for their services, because sometimes the people who actually don't pay for their services, who connect themselves illegally and they don't pay for the services, they end up using it or abusing those services. And that's why those networks eventually becomes overloaded, and we have those type of problems. Especially in winter, we actually find this becoming much of a bigger problem. And then we continuously remove those illegal connections. And unfortunately, that becomes a hostile environment. When we removing the illegal connections, we end up having to bring in police, because the communities will then be violent and burning tires and all those type of problems. So we're trying to actually engage communities in such a way that when this thing happens, it doesn't become very hostile, and we actually work with the communities. But most of the time, it's unfortunately a hostile environment. You can move to the next slide, please. So the next slide just talks to the 8-point plan that Eskom has established to focus on energy losses and revenue protection in general. But then specifically, I'll also just talk to what we're doing on illegal connections. You look at point number 1 is illegal connection, removal of illegal connections, and meter tampering where they happened, and when we normalize the environment where we actually find this. We also audit, fix, and recover revenue for both large power users and small power users in an environment where they don't necessarily connect illegally, but then they tamper with their meters. So when we find those type of issues, then we then change those meters or update what needs to be updated, and then start billing them correctly, and then recover the lost revenue as well from that environment. The other element that we're looking at is smart meters that we are installing now, which will then assist us in recovering revenue. and also assisting us in terms of this load reduction that we're seeing in the past few years, where we're doing load reduction. And if we have implemented these smart meters, we then are going to be able to do load limiting and not necessarily load reduction. The curbing of illegal vending is one of the other areas that we're actually looking at, where we're working with law enforcement agencies and bringing technology to make sure that this illegal vending is actually reduced or basically completely done away with. The other element, Chair, is we're looking at increasing FBE, because we believe some of the people that don't afford maybe 50 kilowatt hours a month is not sufficient. And if we increase it to 250 kilowatt hours a month at least, that will then be something that can actually be a little bit more sufficient. But we also then encourage people who don't afford to go and register and start collecting this going forward. We also had a big issue around zero bias. We are reducing those. That is one of the biggest drive that we've had in the past few months. We had about 2.2 million zero bias. We've now reduced those to just about 1.3 now, and we are continuously reducing them. We're making sure that we actually get to zero at the end of the day. The other element that we believe will assist us in managing these losses better is engaging on a public awareness campaign, where we educate and share information with the general public, but also engaging stakeholders, especially leadership in the various communities, to make sure that people understand what services Eskom is offering, and also protecting the networks that Eskom has, and also making sure that we encourage people to pay for the services that they are receiving. That way, we believe that people will then understand that when they pay for the services, then the service also then will then start improving in their areas. Load reduction, I've already spoken about load reduction. Load reduction is a process that was forced on us when we found areas being overloaded and transformer burning, and we then realized that we can't continuously replace those transformers, because it actually puts a burden on Eskom financially as well. So in areas where a lot of illegal connections happen and the networks are overloaded, we end up when during peak hours basically reducing load in those environments, and that is one of those areas that we continuously focus on. And we believe that when we remove the illegal connections, we reduce losses on those networks, then load reduction will be not necessary going forward. Chair, I'll also just look at maybe the next slide that talks to the results that we've achieved thus far. If we look at, I've already spoken to a reduction of zero bias from 2.2 million to around 1.8, sorry, 1.3. We are, like I said, pushing to get those to zero. In the process of reducing zero bias and also removing illegal connections, recovering lost revenue from customers who have tampered with their meters, we've actually made some good progress. About 94 million was recovered from this zero bias, close to about 400 million also coming from the revenue recovery. Which is something, and we continuously push to make sure that everybody pays for the services that they receive, even if you think you've tampered with your meter and nobody is seeing. As we do audits, we pick those up, and then we'll then even recover that lost revenue from those type of customers. I think I'm gonna stop here. Maybe skip the the next two slides and just share the map that shows where load reduction is happening, and then I can then stop from here. If you look at the two maps, it will show you the losses. If you look at Gauteng, Mpumalanga, Limpopo, your KZN, and the Free State, that's where the biggest issues are in terms of illegal connections, in terms of losses. And then if you go you look to the right, you see the map that talks to where load reduction happened, and it's a mirror image of what we've seen, where losses are happening. So we've identified where the feeders that are problematic, and then we continuously work on those feeders. And as they improve, then they get dropped from the load reduction. Chair, that is the feedback I needed to give. Thank you very much.
Honorable Chair, I think we are done with our presentation. Thanks. Over to you, Chair. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
No, thank you very much, Mr. Kassim. And certainly, there is a lot of information that we've got to process here. And certainly, just for your own information, tomorrow we'll be engaging Eskom, we'll be engaging the City of Johannesburg and the City of Tshwane. And the information that you have shared as it pertains to their DAA is going to be crucial in guiding us in that regard. There are a number of questions, naturally, that members will have, and a discussion that we've got to kick off as we speak, even to the Eskom debt relief bill. So I'm going to open the floor up to members. We'll note them as I did put earlier considerations with Honorable Galega Mazibuko also. So let me just take a number of questions up front. I note Honorable Wakelin. I note Honorable Douglas, Honorable Kwankwa, Honorable Siate, Honorable Mwali, Honorable Bateman, and then Honorable Sikete, Honorable Mkonto. I see
Honorable Mazibuko.
Honorable Mazibuko. I will cite her last as she will continue the work that she's going. I see Honorable Van Rooyen has joined us today. This is a special occasion, clearly. And then I think I've covered everybody as far as I go. And Honorable, I did note Honorable Mwali. Let me then allow, just as we look at this issue, I want to maybe put my question up front. My fear is that Eskom is going to be heavily indebted in as far as what it means for the broader fiscal risk. So I'm going to note the question about what do you project Eskom's debt as far as its cumulative debt and its risks to the fiscal is going to be? Where do you expect that to peak in the medium term? And as we consider the Eskom debt relief bill, are you all confident that effectively this last disbursement of funds will be the final curtailing of the Eskom debt? Because it's a big risk in terms of its own, in our own fiscal sustainability. And then furthermore, the question speaks to whether or not you believe that as these tariffs are being hiked, we can all lament the fact that energy is becoming expensive. Citizens, some of them are not only load shedding on their own accord, they are load shedding on the basis of the fact that they genuinely cannot afford electricity. What I hear the previous speaker raising the fact that you are going to increase the amount of available free energy, but I think let's have a discussion broadly about whether the economy can afford skyrocketing costs of energy, and that would be a discussion. I'll put those questions there. So Honorable Mr. Kasim, if you can take those on board, and then as you respond later, you can. Let me recognize Honorable Wakelin.
Good morning, Chair. I hope I'm audible. First and foremost, thank you very much to the Eskom team in presenting again. The last time we met each other was in November last year, physically at the offices, and I would like to start from there. Just a number of matters that came to my attention, and I would like to just engage on a few matters that emanated from that original conversation. And that will assist us to have an understanding from a risk, because my focus this morning is particularly around risk and how we mitigate certain risks as far as Eskom is concerned. I would like to start off by asking the first thing, which is quite important to me. So there is currently a matter that has been in the media, which you did not speak to, and that concerns me, is the matter of the ghost prepaid tokens. From the indication I've got, is that approximately about 50 billion has been wasted or stolen from that ghost prepaid tokens and the internal syndicates that have used that. So my question to you would be, how would you plug that hole from your current budget, and what are you going to do to deal with this? It seems to me, and at the end I would like to make a summary comment on everything I said, but it seems to me that this specific matter has been ongoing for years and it's not been dealt with appropriately. It should be zero, but it seems like the total is around 50 billion as far as ghost prepaid tokens are concerned. I just need to get a sense and comfort that that's been dealt with. Then one of the team's members submitted a good 8-point plan explaining how they're going to deal with electricity theft. And the figure that was quoted this morning is around 458 million that has been crawled back. The electricity cost for theft, and just in this for last financial year, what I've got is 20 billion. And I'm stand to be corrected, it's around about 20 billion. So it's small change in comparison what should be done. And I am concerned that the legal connections are not done with appropriately. My question then is, how do we know and how do you measure this particular matter? And you have shown now some successes. But it's important to me that we know that we deal with this appropriately, because 458 million out of 20 billion a year, it's small change. So I don't say it's not good, but I say it's not good enough. Then I would like to know, as far as your gas to power projects that you want to implement, as the Treasury has not given guarantees on those, would you be utilizing the current appropriation that has been given to you to be utilizing that as part of your plan? Or how would you be able to pay for the gas to power projects that you are busy implementing? Then there are two matters, Chair, that is very concerning to me. The first one is around the Electricity Regulation Authority Amendment Act has required that the National Transmission Company SA, or as we know it as the NTCSA, had to be separated and be an independent entity already. It's now been 5 years ago that this has been established, and it's still a subsidiary of Eskom. And the sense I get it, that they will not continue finalizing this matter as a separate entity, because once it's an independent company, I get a sense that they're not keen on competition and to break up the monopoly. So, and the same question goes to the second one, which is the Eskom Finance Company, which we spoke about in November last year. You currently sit with around about the 9 billion rand loan book of houses that you financed on behalf of your employees. A part of the agreement was that you would have sold that company, and that is still have not done. So there's a lethargic attitude for me as far as these things are concerned. I get a sense that Eskom are not prepared to go into competition and make sure that they are ready for the competition that's coming into the market. And these are all the hurdles that they have not been dealing with. So I'm very concerned about, first of all, obviously the National Transmission Company SA, as well as the Eskom Finance Company. Then, Chair, I'm going to conclude in the last two matters. You have appointed a company to leverage your asset portfolio and to generate revenue. We don't see or track currently how successful that implementation has been done. If you can enlighten us, and then with our next turnaround also a meeting, possibly just tell us where have you been with as far as the implementation of that is concerned? And then lastly, my comment is, it seems to me it's still business as usual, as opposed to really turnaround strategies to make Eskom to work. Chair, and I'll leave that comment to be debated. Thank you, Chair. I'm done.
Thank you, Honorable Waitlin. Honorable Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to say thank you to the Eskom team and to thank Mr. Kasim, the Chief Financial Officer, for being here with us today. We were with you last year at the Eskom head office, and there were a lot of promises made to us and a lot of presentations done. And during this year, it's a good opportunity for us to actually see how far you've come. And, you know, for us, we still have a problem with load shedding. And I know that you're saying there's no more load shedding, there's a load reduction, but that's the same effect. People are without electricity. So if we're talking about what this bill is, Mr. Chair, this Eskom debt relief amendment bill isn't a relief for the people. It is a bailout for Eskom, for their failure. It's engineered to prepare Eskom for the butchering table of privatization. Since 2019, we've seen a cumulative 388.6 billion rand in state support to Eskom, 158.6 billion rand through special appropriation, and now 230 billion rand more through this Debt Relief Act. And what have we received in turn? We have more load reduction, and many of the issues that we have found around illegal connections and the challenges that we have around the use of consultants, and also the renewable energy is not being done in a way that is important for us. We see municipal debt has ballooned to 94.6 billion rand as of March 2025, according to your own documents. Illegal connections infrastructure has been sabotaged, and it completely persists, but there's no consequence management. The energy availability factor is still nowhere near the 70% promised recovery. And now Eskom wants 321 billion rand in capex and 75 billion rand in new borrowing by 2030, after it was just relieved of debt. Now, Mr. Chair, this looks like a black hole that money is going into, and we're not getting much out of, Mr. Chair. Last year, we did have a good chat. I'm glad that Mr. Kasim mentioned the fact that they are now looking at clean coal technologies. In our session at Eskom last year, I raised this issue. I said that China has been funding their energy whole network and with coal, with clean coal. And I was there in 2008, which I mentioned last year. And Shinu is a company that has clean coal energy technology and has had it for 20 years, and they've been rolling it out everywhere in the world except here in South Africa. We could have long time ago already had enough energy. We've got enough coal, and we've got enough coal that we can burn that would bring down the prices of electricity. And if we can create clean coal power, Mr. Chair, then we can really turn and industrialize our economy. But I'm glad that you're heading in that direction now, and I'm glad that you started listening to MK as an opposition party. Because, as you said, Mr. Kasim, it's not a coal issue, it's an emissions issue. It's not about the actual project or the product of coal. It's actually about how we manage the emissions. And there are so many solutions that can bring that emissions down to almost zero in some instances. So my questions to the delegation, Mr. Chair, how can you claim financial recovery while 87% of municipalities under debt relief are non-compliant? Yes, Eskom continues supplying them with electricity without any consequences. Is this a willful mismanagement or institutional negligence? And how do we solve that problem? The amendment reduces the 254 billion rand debt relief down to 230 billion. Where is the forensic audit showing us where the 24 billion was saved, spent, or redirected? Who benefit from this so-called savings? You claim 94 million rand recovered from zero buyers and 485 million from meter audits, yet municipal debt grew by 15 billion in 2 years. Are we just recycling stats to make the patient look healthier before the funeral, or is this like just a show? Why is the distribution agency agreement model not being applied across all defaulting municipalities? Why are we afraid to revoke licenses or ring-fence electricity revenues as per Section 27 of the Electricity Regulation Act? And why are we not giving municipalities support? Why are we not helping them? Why are we not funding them? Why are we not giving them? They have independent power producing licenses themselves. Why don't we free them from the restrictions that you have upon them and help them to get investment from overseas to build and manufacture power stations? So, there's a lot of different things, Mr. Chair, that I'm seeing there's not a real reflection of what's going on. As MK, we want a full public audit of all debt instruments, including those converted into equity, a moratorium on any further unbundling of PPPs until Parliament has exercised full oversight. And we look at the creation of people-owned energy cooperatives under Eskom's umbrella for rural, indigenous, and township communities. And lastly, as I close, a new public interest clause in all Eskom borrowing and procurement, Mr. Chair. So from our side, we won't support this bill, but we really believe that we need to talk truth to one another and talk truth to power. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Douglas. Honorable Kwangwa.
Yeah,
Chawe.
man. My daughter, think I share video me off that network issue.
Siyavuya nje ukubona namhlanje so kunjalo nje ukuqhuba.
Ndikhona na last week ndiyabulela nam ndiyavuya about. Thank you very much. Chairperson, the first issue for me is centers around one issue that when I think Honorable Wakeling made a valid point that it seems to me that it's still to a large extent business as usual at Eskom, because we're still talking around the same issues, especially when it comes to the municipal debt. For example, they speak about interest suppression as one of the model interest reductions, which are great initiatives, especially for municipalities that are struggling to pay for the electricity. However, they've also highlighted the point that a lot of those municipalities have unfunded costs, meaning the inability of quite a number of these municipalities to service their debts has less to do with willful non-compliance, if you want, or non-payment. It could be, it's to a large extent, especially if you look at the number, the top 10. I mean, I looked at Governbeki municipality. 40% of the people who live in that municipality, according to stats, they live below the poverty breadline. That naturally means that quite a number of these municipalities do not have revenue raising capacity, and because they don't, they cross-subsidize, use money that's supposed to go to Eskom for other operational requirements because they have a lot of unfunded costs. That is what Eskom said. And perhaps the strategy then to try and resolve that is not an Eskom issue where we deal with it in silos. Perhaps it's a matter of government to say comprehensively what kind of package and strategy can we come up with to try and address municipalities who do not have the ability to actually pay for their services due to reasons I've cited already. There's another point you made, small scale clean energy, talking about renewable energy mix. I do not understand. One of the issues from an ideological point of view that makes sense, if you want to, the quickest and the easiest way to lose your sovereignty is to have no control over your energy that you supply. Now, the view which I've stated several times in this committee is one of having Eskom invest in its own energy mix, but not small scale clean as if they're experimenting, but have the energy mix so that we don't have to naturally rely to a large extent on private power producers for our energy supply needs as a country. Because if you do that, then you undermine your sovereignty. You will find people with political motives, or when they don't agree with the government of the day, using energy supply or the fact that they have a significant supply in the market, trying to manipulate political events in the country. It's happened elsewhere, and people tried to move away from that. Perhaps what we should be talking about, instead of small-scale clean energy investment, is Eskom saying they too are beginning to invest in a diversified energy mix instead of depending on solar or independent power producers for their energy supply component of it. Not that to say the markets should not play a role in the supply of energy. I want to understand, given this thing, and then when you understand that the fundamentals of the business have not improved significantly, then when they say they want to go back to the capital markets to raise 25 billion rands in 2028, and then outer years after that. How is that going to be done, given the fact that the reason why they needed the government to strengthen their balance sheet is precisely because they were struggling to raise money from the capital markets due to the financial health of Eskom? Is it an anticipation that the situation will improve? If yes, how? And then the capex, it's linked perhaps to the investment in the different energy mix. They're saying the improvement in the balance sheet has enabled them to invest in capital expenditure to deal with dilapidating infrastructure over the next 3 years. But what kind of infrastructure is that in the main? Does it reflect the mix that I'm talking about? That is mentioned in passing in the presentation. And if yes, because it's allowed them to do that over a period of 3 years, how is the supply of energy going to improve? How is the situation also going to improve insofar as energy supply is concerned in the country? I think the other issue for me is when it comes to encouraging people to have solar panels, right? For example, there has been a big drive for people to actually make sure that they try and reduce the burden on the Eskom grid by having residential solar panels. Right, Eskom on the one hand has waived the registration fees for that process until I think March 2026. However, people, once they've installed the solar panels, they have to pay up to about 20,000 rands for the services of engineers who must then register these things with Eskom or a municipality. That serves as a huge hindrance. It's a barrier for a lot of people to be able to enter that market, because most people, even those who need a very small system to be able to power up their houses in the townships, do not have monies to pay expensive engineers. Shouldn't that service to some extent be a service that Eskom can have in-house? Because whatever proof of registration is required, whatever technical capabilities are required by such an engineer to be able to certify a system, are things that Eskom probably has those skills internally and can be able to supply them at a minimal cost to the public in order to address the energy supply issue in the country. Thank you, Chair.
Ndiabulela Chawe. Let us, if we can, I'm going to hand over to Honorable Skete, and then I'm going to Honorable Mazibuko will then continue from that point on. Honorable Skete.
No, thanks, Chair, for the opportunity. Let me also welcome the presentation done by Eskom. Chair, I just have a few questions here that if indeed Eskom revenue and profit before tax improve in Q3 of the 2024-2025 financial year, why has the shareholders not received any dividends at this time? That is my first question, Chair. The second one, Chair, which I want to ask, that the most notable key takeaway since bid window 1, Chair, is that the levelized cost of electricity for renewable energy has been decreasing with every success bidding round. Put simply, is that become cheaper and cheaper to produce renewable energy, Chair. However, why has the falling cost of renewable energy production not translated into lower electricity prices for customers? You have also raised it, Chair, especially vulnerable and poor customers, because electricity is very, very expensive, Chair. Why, when you have renewable energy and still the electricity is still high? And my third question, Chair, it is noted that the conditions of the debt relief package from National Treasury precludes investment in new generation over the debt relief period. The debt relief conditions are also clear on the immediate next steps for generation. These entail that National Treasury, in collaboration with the shareholders' representatives, conduct an independent assessment of Eskom's operations, which will recommend which power stations can be resuscitated to original equipment manufacturer standard. As part of this assessment, other options like concessions of some power stations will be considered, including optimal approach to the stations reaching their end of economy life. Now, Chair, a critical question is that have Eskom and the shareholders representative conducted an independent assessment of Eskom's operations? If yes, what are the relevant details of these assessments? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The baton has been handed over to me. The Chair has just left as indicated, and good morning and thank you for the presentations. The next question will come from Honorable Siate. Honorable Siate, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. Am I audible?
You are audible, Honorable Member.
Okay, thank you very much. Greetings to everybody on the platform. Greetings to honorable members, Eskom, members of the support staff, administrators, and even the media houses present. So mine is just to Honorable Chair, I have two questions. So now, the first one being like, as part of the debt relief measures announced in the 2023 National Budget Speech, National Treasury set out conditions that affect Eskom's role in South Africa's JET. Among others, capital expenditures is restricted to transmissions and distribution activities. Greenfield generation projects may be pursued with a written approval from the Minister of Finance during the debt relief period. Furthermore, transmission should allow for extensive private sector participation in the development of the transmission network. As a result, Eskom's capex needs for 2023 to 2030 has been reduced from around 383 billion to around 76 billion. In this regard, what potential opportunities for public-private partnerships has Eskom explored to fund JET initiatives subject to conditions of the debt relief? Then my second question would be, given that the final 70 billion debt takeover was revised to 40 billion for 2025-26, 10 billion in 2028-29, resulting in a government saving of approximately 20 billion. How will Eskom ensure that the debt relief, which is 24 billion less than initially projected, does not prevent the utility from implementing its financial recovery turnaround objective in a sustainable manner? And those will be my two questions, Chair, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Siate. The opportunity will now be given to Honorable Mwali.
Thank you so much, Chair.
Honorable Mwali.
I'm not sure if I'm audible. Am I audible?
Yes, but your bandwidth is very weak. Your bandwidth, Honorable Member, is very weak. You might have to switch off your camera. We have seen that you are present in the meeting, and it's you. So you may switch off the camera so that you are audible. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Chair. I don't have many questions. I have two. For the meter tampering, where Eskom officials are involved, are there any reported incidences? If so, what is the state of the interdisciplinary action? And what is the rate of successful convictions if there are cases were brought into our courts? Because, Chair, we must mention this. some of the issues that we are faced with Eskom, their members are involved with these illegal connections that end up putting the institution at a huge risk. So I wish to know that were there any successful prosecutions, or were there any matters that were taken to court, particularly involving their employees that are continuing to do these illegal connections. Number two, Chairperson, I want to know from Eskom, we have areas where people have connected illegally, and then they will have a burst of a transformer. Now, when the community comes here and say, can Eskom come forward and tell us what is it that we need to do as a community so that we will have a transformer that accommodates that there's new houses now, because that one burst because of overload. Eskom, number one, would not come into play so that they can assist the community. So I want to know what is the process from Eskom that they need to come, or what is it that they need to do so that they can come and have to be addressed by community so that they can try and maneuver and have an amicable solution. If they are not addressing these issues, we end up with communities that go now and destroy the infrastructure if Eskom does not respond on time. And again, as I close, Chair, the last one, if you look at this bill, this does not speak to the realities of people, of our people at home. This speaks to mismanagement of funds at Eskom, and also of issues of Eskom that they promised that they will address, but seemingly they are not addressing them. So, Chair, please may the presenter take us into confidence as to how this relief they are seeking is going to address the issues of people in our on the ground that are faced with the situation of not having light. The community I'm referring to, it has gone for over 12 months without light, and they've made all means necessary to have Eskom come and find an amicable solution so that they can have their lights back.
Thank you so much, Honorable Member. The next Honorable Member to take the platform is Honorable Bateman. Honorable Bateman.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair, and thank you to, well, good morning to all my colleagues, and also thank you very much to the CFO, Mr. Kasim, and all of those who have presented today and who are present. Just firstly, with regard to Eskom finances, slide 12, it seems to indicate that Eskom finances have been turned around. Is this an accurate reflection of the current operating reality that Eskom is now operating profitably? I noticed that the figures are for quarter 3, 2025, which I assume is up till the end of December. I would like to know why the March figures haven't been presented up to the end of quarter 4, just to update us with the most recent information, which would have been till the end of March. But in any event, though the numbers have not been presented, I would like to know if the numbers up to the end of March 2025 are showing a consistent trend, and also if the profitability numbers make adequate provision for bad debts. Then on the question of the debt, on slide 18, it refers to some of the conditions imposed on Eskom in terms of the debt relief package of 254 billion. Have all the conditions there been listed? And if not, what were the other conditions that were applicable, and have all of those conditions been met? I know one of the terms of the package was the disposal of Eskom Finance Company. I saw there was an announcement around that in December. I'd like to know what the current status is regarding that disposal. It refers there also to how the Minister of Finance needs to approve any new borrowings. I'd like to know, have there been any new borrowings approved by the Minister of Finance? And will there be any other guarantees or commitments that need to be provided by Treasury in respect of Eskom? I believe the answer is that that's not expected, but I would just like to ask you just to speak to that. And what would you say is the likelihood that there could be further guarantees or further commitments required? But even if it's unlikely, are we talking about a remote possibility or what sort of level of likelihood? Then on the issue of the forecasts, what assumptions are being made in those financial forecasts with regards to future energy price increases for Eskom customers? There's a concern, and I think it's a very valid concern, that we are paying too much for power in South Africa, that we're paying for the sins of mismanagement of Eskom, corruption, and so our prices have become unaffordable for many people and very much not competitive, and that holds our industry, our economy back. So what assumptions are being made in the forecast with regard to energy tariffs? And also, I know Eskom lost many paying customers during load shedding, and there's a concern that if the energy price gets more and more uncompetitive and expensive, that Eskom will continue losing customers, not because of reliability, but simply on price and competitiveness. And so is Eskom already losing business customers and large-scale users of energy because it's too expensive? And how significant is that risk of losing customers to Eskom's projections? And then finally, just picking up on one of Eskom's recommendations was that National Treasury should issue a new circular or amend the ERA with conditions that mandatory DAAs are to be concluded for all defaulting municipalities. This seems like a very sensible suggestion on the face of it. What has been the National Treasury's response to this request? Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Honorable Bateman. And the next member is Honorable Nkonto.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, please allow me to switch off my video. I have poor network.
Yes, please.
Chair, Chair, good morning to you, Chair, honorable members, our guests, Mr. Kasim and his team from Eskom. Chair, this whole presentation is reminding us that Eskom, through NERSA, will continue to punish those who pay, those responsible citizens who pay for their electricity for the sins of Eskom's finance mismanagement and those irresponsible citizens who don't want to pay for their electricity use. My first question, Chair, I want to check with Eskom. I'm avoiding to repeat what my colleagues have already alluded to. Chair, is Eskom aware that when a transformer breaks down due to the overload by illegal connections in some parts of the country, members of the community are required to buy and replace the transformer, which amounts to 80,000. And what is their take on that? If they are aware of that, don't they think that is another factor that makes members of the community to feel entitled and engage to non-payment? Because according to them, they now own the transformer. The there is a member that has talked about Eskom employees directly involved in meter tampering and illegal connections. Chair, we really want to know as to exactly what is being done by those people, because members of the community, very few have expertise to do these things. And how are they going to make sure that these employees, they don't use their expertise to sabotage the Eskom infrastructure and ability to collect a revenue? The next question, Chair, they are saying they want the one of the alternatives is for National Treasury to pay the equitable share directly to Eskom, the ones that has to be paid to municipalities. And then the equitable share doesn't go with just electricity usage, payment of electricity usage. It goes with other things, the infrastructure and everything. If they are given those equitable shares, are they going to take all the responsibilities and be responsible for what the municipalities are doing? The last one, Chair, is the clean coal technologies. Chair, what is envisaged in terms of lowering or decreasing electricity costs in the country? Because there is nothing, Chair, that will be acceptable if it is not bringing down the cost of electricity in this country. Thank you, Chair.
Are you done, Honorable Mkhonto?
Yes, Chair, I'm done.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Member. And the next Honorable Member on the list is Honorable Van Rooyen. Over to you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Chair of the session. My apology because of network problem. I won't be able to show my face. A very good morning to all in attendance. Chair, very quickly, SMK Party, we are extremely concerned, of the impact of this particular relief intervention. And I think the Honorable Chairperson, that the Maimani said a mouthful in terms of our areas of concern, because we are looking at this whole intervention as one of the critical aspects of the debt risks that are being imposed on our fiscus. So we are really, really interested in understanding the impact of this particular intervention. Well, we hear reports of it's having improved, giving space to Eskom management on its debt, on its balance sheet, and focus on its maintenance program. But the real of the matter is we are 2 years now, almost 2 years with this intervention. It will be important to hear from the Eskom team as to whether are we really realizing the objectives that this intervention was set for, or are we on course to realize the objectives of this intervention? I mean, the efficacy rate to us is very important, because remember, one of the key concerns that was raised when the intervention was agreed upon was the issue of continuous bailouts and continuous pumping of money into state entities without realizing any value for that money. So maybe if we can hear from the team, Eskom team, what's their take? Are we really impacting, or is this intervention really yielding the required results? Then secondly, Chair, one member raised a very important issue. It takes more than just one entity or maybe Eskom to address this problem. This is a problem that cuts across various departments, cuts across various state entities, but also cuts across various role players, And I know there were platforms in the past realizing the essence of collaboration to deal with this problem. There were platforms in the past, both at the executive level and at administration level, that were created to deal with the situation. We had in the cabinet what was called interministerial teams, just to focus on this issue. I'm not sure, because now the minister and his team or his team members are not here from the executive. What are these platforms still working? How much of programs that were initiated by these platforms been given effect? Or maybe these platforms have just collapsed? Maybe from the administration, we can hear from the Eskom team. Are there any collaborative, in the spirit of Intergovernmental Relations Framework Act, are there any collaboration platforms that are currently taking place between the administration of Eskom and other role players? Because there's so much that is required from the collaboration perspective for this intervention to be effective. Because Eskom alone is not going to win this particular one. We need all stakeholders to come on board, and that's why the essence of collaborative. While still there, SALGA, I'm not sure what's the buy-in of SALGA into the issue of the distribution agency agreement. And how are you working with SALGA? And how are you working with National Treasury? I'm raising National Treasury because I think the uptake, as you correctly cited, might be very low. This is mainly because municipalities are expected to inject resources, to get these agency agreements running. Now, I'm not sure what is the role of National Treasury in that process, because most of the municipalities' revenue bases have been eroded because of poor economic performance in the country broadly, or maybe globally, So what is the role of National Treasury, SALGA, in terms of giving effect to this intervention, the distribution agency agreement? I think it will be very, very crucial for SALGA as an association for municipalities to obviously support such an intervention. And lastly, Chair, from my side, on the rollout of smart meters, I'm not sure what is the status of this process. How far are we? What are the lessons learned so far? And how many municipalities out of the number of municipalities that we have been covered by this particular project? I think getting the status from an accountability point of view will be very, very helpful. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. I think we have exhausted the list of the questions, and I would like to ask some questions and switch off my video as well.
Sorry,
Yes.
Chair. There's a hand from Honorable Crown Prince Nchabeling from the MK. The hand is still up.
Okay. He was not noted by the chair at the beginning.
Okay.
Member, you can take the platform and quickly ask your question. Is Honorable Nchabeling a part of the members of the committee? Honorable Nchabele.
Honorable Chair, thank you so much.
Mr. Mashile, we can't hear the honorable member.
Okay, we can proceed with the rest. I thought I saw the hand of Honorable Gamede, but it's not there anymore. But if possible, then the honorable member can be given a chance a little later. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much. Also considering that members of MK who are members of the committee has already asked questions. So the member can then submit the questions in writing. Thank you very much, members, and thank you very much, CFO. Mine, just before you respond, you know, I'm trying to link this presentation to the Debt Relief Amendment Bill. If you can just help me there to cite the link, because there's a Debt Amendment Bill and there's this presentation you've just made. Because for me, the presentation does not necessarily flag concerns regarding the reduction in the relief and implications of that on the entity's financial sustainability. And my other question is related to Honorable Mwali's question on the proactive measures for curbing illegal connections. Because it is obvious that where there's an emergence of informal settlements, there is illegal connection, and that has been going on for long. And what you have presented here for me is more reactive measures than proactive measures. And one would expect that at least you would have put systems in place to avoid this, especially where there's an emergence of informal settlements, obviously working together with other departments, Department of Housing, Community Safety. And my other question is on the large power users, CFO. The revenue recovery from the large power users. You know, what technologies do you have to curb corruption in this regard, where you would find that the large power user is owing millions, if not billions of monies, and due to corruption, the person or the company ends up paying maybe 10% of what the company owes. And that amount doesn't even necessarily go to the company or to Eskom, but goes to individuals or those collectors. So there are many rumors in terms of corruption on this regard, and one would expect that you have already put technology in place to curb this corruption. And my other question, CFO, is that considering that Eskom's gross debt securities and balance borrowing will be reduced by 40%, thereby stabilizing at 280 billion over the next 5 years. Will Eskom be in a position to ensure that the balance of debt servicing cost, as well as the cash flows required for the capital investment program, are fully funded through cash generated from operations rather than through government assistance going forward? Further, CFO, are there any chances that Eskom will default on its debt obligations at the end of debt relief period? Eskom will default on its obligations, as I said, at the end of the debt relief period due to the seasonality of Eskom's cash flow, as well as the entry of IPPs in the electricity market and the widespread of small-scale embedded generations, which threaten the utilities' revenue-generating capacity. And maybe the last one, before you and your team respond, the revenue from electricity sales, you know, is normally higher during the winter season or the winter months as compared to the summer months because of the high demand season tariff increases. Moreover, primarily, energy costs associated with renewable IPP purchase are lower in the winter months, which are the first 6 months of the financial year, due to a lower proportion of power being produced from renewable sources during this time. So in respect of this CFO and team, how much revenue did Eskom generate from electricity sales in summer months relative to winter months during 2024-25 financial year? Similarly, what was Eskom's primary energy cost in summer months compared to winter months of the 2024 financial year? So as the person who has been given the powers to chair the meeting, I will therefore hand over to yourself, CFO, as well as your team, to quickly respond. You might not necessarily have to respond to each and every question one by one, but if the team could try and cover most of the concerns and the questions raised by the members. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. Kassim.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and members. Chair, I'm gonna answer the first question that you ended with, and also Honorable Chairperson Maimani's question around. I think the ultimate question is, will Eskom default on its debt service commitments after the debt relief? Chair, we have not defaulted in the last 8 years since I've been CFO. With this debt relief, Chair, as the slides, and I'm trying to link it to your question that says, how does this link to the debt relief bill? We do see an improvement in our financial situation, and especially the balance sheet together with the financial ratios improving. This is also reflected in the credit ratings outlook of much more positive and some upgrades. So Chair, I think from that perspective, we are saying we will not default. We also actively, it's not in this slide, and we can also provide more detailed write-ups on it. We are actively managing our maturities of debt, as you indicated, Chair, the peaks that we do see in some years. We are doing some liability management of that actively through the board committee. So we are comfortable from that perspective. Chair, the point I will highlight around the intention of this bill and where do we see it taking Eskom. We wanted to get Eskom in a position correctly, so Chair, where we don't come back and ask through our shareholder National Treasury and this committee for further bailouts. As members have indicated, just short of 500 billion cumulatively over the number of years, it's just unsustainable. That money can be spent in many other programs that government needs to invest in. But our one concern, Chair, around the financial sustainability of Eskom is the municipal debt, as my colleague has presented and as many members have asked. We fully agree that we can't solve that alone as Eskom. We need the support of the other government departments. Through our shareholder ministry, we presented to the Portfolio Committee on Energy, where Salga, National Treasury, COCTA, Eskom presented. So we really need to arrest that situation because, as I've indicated, it gets to a point, Chair, where Eskom then, by not collecting, as we've seen in the last financial year, from March 24, where the arrear debt was sitting at 74 billion to March 25, we went to 95 billion. That's a 20 billion rand increase that we did not collect. We can't be a bank to the municipality because it's just unsustainable at this, around 1.5, sometimes 2 billion per month. So, Chair, that is the biggest risk to Eskom's financial sustainability going forward. I believe on the other items, and I'm going to answer, Chair, in some of the questions that were raised. Why are we confident on this outlook? One is our operational performance is definitely improving, and we've got the drive and the support from the board. As we indicated, we need to also extract our own efficiencies, and we're working on that. With regard to the outlook in terms of the forecast, I think as Honorable Bateman asked, what are the price increase assumptions? Chair, yeah, we in our outlook of our corporate plan, we've assumed single-digit increases for Eskom. We've got a clear message from the shareholder, from the board. This double-digit increases are unacceptable. And yes, we do acknowledge that even at single-digit for certain customers and categories, it may be unsustainable. But I think we've taken heed of that direction, and that's the assumption we put in. We've also seen, Chair, in our outlook that yes, as we get more and more IPPs coming on, as well as bilateral agreements, we do envisage that we will lose some sales to competitors. But I think importantly, we see that a significant part of the baseload customers do remain with Eskom. And we want to ensure that we can continuously supply them that reliable supply. I think, Chairperson, in terms of our capital expenditure and how do we see ourselves funding that, you asked the question, are we going to fund it from operations? A large part of that will be funded from operations. We will also take into account the use of a public-private partnership model, and we know together with the National Treasury and our Minister of Energy Department and the board, we do fully support that. It'll be a combination where some CapEx will be funded as normal, solely on Eskom's balance sheet, but we are looking to diversify that funding with the use of public-private partnerships to help us with funding, but also to help us with the execution of our projects. Chair, you asked the question, have we borrowed during this debt relief period? No, we have not requested new borrowings from National Treasury and the Minister. We've only drawing down on existing facilities, as was in agreement when the debt relief kicked in. And there's a small component that remains over this year and next year. And we don't envisage, even with the last 70 billion now being rephased to 40 and 10 billion, as indicated in the outlook, we would only go back to the markets in 2028. And here's the important point, Honorable Chair and members. We haven't made an aggressive assumption in terms of municipal arrears and payment levels improving. If that does happen with the support of government and also through the support of this committee, Chair, that 25 billion rand that we borrow to deliver on your capital needs and continue with operations can reduce if we can arrest the growth in arrear debts. And in what it does mean that 75 billion that we currently have in the plan can also reduce if there are more funds coming from the collection of the municipalities as well as the metros going forward. So I thought I needed to highlight those points up front. Chair, I think what the other one I want to highlight, yes, we do know there are certain Eskom employees that are involved in this corrupt activities around illegal connections. That's been dealt with through our head of our security and investigations, working in conjunction with the SIU and law enforcement agencies, reporting directly to our CEO into the board. And Chair, there I would suggest I take that question and we come back with a formal report on that, on the employees that are involved and what has happened. I don't have the details with regard to that. If I then move on to some of the specific questions that I can address, and then I'll ask my colleagues to step in. If I go starting from the beginning with Honorable Wakeland, the other question that was asked is the issue around the ghost tokens and estimated at 50 billion. Honorable Wakeland, yeah, we have done a lot of work around our systems and improving our security around our online vending system. Since last year, we believe that many controls have been put in place. We're working closely also with law enforcement agencies around this issue, together with reporting to our board as well as the auditors. So we do believe that the controls we put in place has, to a large extent, arrested this. I am not going to say it's 100% closed, but it has improved significantly. And in all the data that we are seeing much more data that is linked to valid tokens that give us the revenue. Similarly, on this one, Chair, I would submit that we provide a written report on the improvements, what we've put in, and what we're seeing the data tell us. With regard to the theft, and my colleague Mabuwe can come in, yes, if you look at the amount of energy losses multiplied by the average electricity price, you will get correctly so, Honorable Wakeland, to the 20 billion number. But these are the initiatives that we are putting in place. We're doing our best to arrest that, but it does take time based on the extensive environment in which the illegal connections occur. With regard to gas to power, yeah, we really at this point in time looking to utilize a PPP public-private partnership to help us fund our gas to power projects. And again, yeah, we work in conjunction with the board, the shareholder, and National Treasury going forward. With regard to the Electricity Regulation Act and NTCSA being separated, yes, it's a separate legal entity, a separate board, but it's still 100% owned by Eskom Holdings. With regard to potentially does that move out of the Eskom group and when in ownership, Chair, I think on that one we should direct to our shareholder ministry to talk around policy and ownership. In terms of our conditions, we have reported regularly to National Treasury in terms of the debt relief bill and compliant with our reporting conditions and what was required in terms of the bill. And the only one that we need to conclude is the issue relating to the sale of the Eskom Finance Company. And as indicated previously, yes, we have an agreement with African Bank on this transaction. We're busily finalizing the last remaining agreements. Our intention is we look to conclude that in the next quarter and then deal with that last remaining condition in terms of the debt relief bill. If I then move on with regard to some of the other questions, I spoke about on our energy availability factor. Yes, we're not at the levels that we'd like it to be at the 70%, but it is part of the recovery plan. And as more and more capacity of some of the remaining large units get added to the grid, including Medupi 4, then the next unit of Kuberg coming back, and Kusile 6 being commissioned, that will add about 2,500 megawatts of baseload capacity that will then give us more supply, which will put us in a far better position to meet the demands of the country. Clean technologies, what our Honorable Douglas has said, yes, it's a big focus area for Eskom, and we're also working in conjunction with our shareholder ministry on those. We in the next few months would like to have some pilots around some clean coal technologies, and it's a key focus for Eskom. On the 70 billion to 50 billion, and when it's been redirected, effectively, all the drawdowns are per the debt relief bill. There's no redirection. We just looked, and to my earlier response, honorable members, we got a big maturity profile in at the beginning of April 2026, and in discussions with National Treasury to manage that issue and that risk, as we're dealing with risk, we felt that it was far better to front load the 70 billion with the 40 billion that will then help deal with the maturity on the 2nd of April 2026, and then 2 years later the 10 billion rand that will come in. If we had to present value a 70 billion rand over 10 years versus having 50 billion front loaded in 3 years, we believe that then puts Eskom in a favorable position, but it also gives some relief to the fiscus as well. On the municipalities and revoking of licenses, as my colleague has indicated, we see that as a last resort. Ideally, we want to work with the municipalities, and in the proposal, we asking on the defaulting ones to make it mandatory. And once we transfer and support those municipalities, they should then continue to deliver that service of electricity. I think that is key. We don't have the capacity and the resources to run all these defaulting municipalities into the future. There has to be a point in time where that is then transferred back to the municipalities. I'm now going to ask my colleagues to deal specifically with the municipal questions and the illegal connections, and I'll just look at some of the questions I haven't covered and return. Marvin, over to you. Thanks, Honorable Chair.
Thanks, Caleb. So I'll deal with a few questions, particularly in regard to Munich debt and revenue and the DAA. There was a question around, do we make provisions for debt? And the answer is yes. Obviously, the accounting standards doesn't allow us not to consider this. In most cases, any debt over 90 days is provided for. We consider it for impairment. And in cases where we have municipalities that have shown non-payment over a long period of time, we have a set of criteria that we evaluate them against, and they go on a cash basis of accounting. And what do I mean by that is we do not recognize the revenue until these municipalities have paid us. So you will not see that flow into our P&L unless these municipalities have actually paid us physical cash. We still continue to bill them and obviously attempt to collect that debt. So in terms of provisioning, we are adequately provided for non-payment and for bad debt that's long outstanding. In terms of the question, I think, was, are we losing customers? We are seeing a decline in volumes. If you look at our results, there's a few reasons for that. Obviously, load shedding didn't help, where customers are looking to self-provide, and as well as where customers are approaching independent providers of power to purchase that power. But however, there is an upside, because in a lot of cases, these customers would need to wheel that energy to an off-taker, and we do get revenue in terms of the use of system charge. So we do charge for the use of our infrastructure to actually transport that electricity from an IPP to an off-taker, wherever that off-taker is located. In terms of the DAA, in terms of National Treasury's response, We have engaged with National Treasury quite extensively, and we have put this proposal forward in the sense that possibly they could look at the current debt relief program and make some amendment to Circular 24, where it now allows for or creates a provision where municipalities that haven't honored their obligation in terms of the debt relief program, that they're obliged to participate in the distribution agency agreement. However, thus far, we haven't received a response. They were going to come back to us, but thus far, we haven't received a response in terms of what their plan is around how they want to handle the debt relief program, because as I mentioned, we've only got 10 compliant municipalities out of the 71. And those were actually municipalities that were paying us, but maybe not paying us 100%. So they were not really the big problematic municipalities that were sitting in the overdue debt. So on that, we are still waiting a formal response from them as they evaluate their debt relief program and decide on how they want to take this forward. In terms of the equitable share, maybe I must just clarify what I was referring to is that for customers within the Eskom supply area that we issue the FPE tokens, the money is paid to the municipality, and we have to claim that money from the municipality where these customers are located. And what we are struggling to do is obviously to recover that money. So all we are referring there to is to pay us directly for the customers, our customers that we are providing the FPE tokens, and not the entire equitable share. Okay, I think I've addressed the questions that I can. I'll hand over to my colleague Mabue to talk to the rest on the illegal connection and what we are doing in terms of technology as well to deal with the issue.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I'm going to respond to a few of the questions that were raised around illegal connection or theft of electricity. But as Philip has already mentioned, the issue around criminality and internal people who are assisting customers to deal with this thing. We will then respond to that through another process where we can then just give the details around that, including the ghost vending processes. It's safe to say, Chair, on the ghost vending side, we've actually done a lot of work from a system perspective to make sure that the systems themselves are robust enough so that we can prevent some of these things happening. And also to make sure that we can trace some of the tokens that were created, especially those that gets loaded onto our meters. If we can find something like that, we then are able to then either remove it from the meter or get the customer to pay for it. But the processes are in place to manage that. My suggestion is I think we will then follow through with what Caleb has already suggested. There's a question around best transformers that Eskom takes long to respond to. As I mentioned earlier on, one of the biggest things that we do, which unfortunately becomes a pain to the customers in a number of communities, is load reduction, where we identify areas where potentially this thing is going to happen and we start managing it. Trying to be proactive in managing it, but unfortunately, sometimes you find yourself having unfortunately lost the transformer, and the challenge around the response time is transformers are not easy things to actually find quicker, and it takes time to actually replace some of this. And it's not only the transformer that needs to be replaced many times. So it involves a lot of work to be done before that network can actually be back online. So we need to work with the communities. We need to work with the councillors in the areas to make sure that people understand where we are and what is it that we're doing. But it's also not advisable for Eskom to actually leave the customers disconnected for long periods, because it's also a regulatory problem for us. If we don't reconnect customers in time, then we get penalized for this. So we are not just sitting back and not doing anything. It's just a challenge that, you know, if transformers pop here and there, it takes time to respond to them. But we are, and I think in cases where maybe councillors or communities find that they are not being assisted, I think it will also be good for them to escalate, so that we can then deal with the issues as quickly as we can. The issue around illegal connections, especially in the informal settlements that there are mushrooming everywhere. The question is, why are we not being proactive? And I think the response is, we are trying very hard to be proactive, to identify areas where there's a need for extension of our networks to include communities that are getting closer to our networks. The challenge is in some cases, those communities are actually sitting or staying in areas that are not necessarily proclaimed, and therefore you cannot go and electrify. But we work with other departments to make sure that where the communities are proclaimed properly, then we can then have electrification projects going in those areas. So it's very, very important for councillors and communities to work with the local communities, the local councillors, and also Eskom in the areas, to identify areas that needs to be electrified, and then we'll then put our plans in place to electrify. The unfortunate part, Honorable Chair, is that when an informal community gets established, that they get established overnight, and they expect to actually be connected on the same day when they get there. And that is where the problem is, and you cannot really anticipate those type of things happening. It's work in progress. We need to work with local communities, with councillors, with everybody, to make sure that our customers get the services. But then we need to make sure that all those services that we give to our customers are actually given to customers that are in areas that are properly proclaimed. The next one, Chair, that I think I need to talk to, it's the one that you asked about LPUs, where corruption is happening in collaboration with our internal people, internal employees, to make sure that customers end up paying less than what they're supposed to be paying. It is something that is happening, where customers collaborate with internal people to try and reduce their bills. But we have systems in place where we identify this type of customers, and I think the big thing for me is we are using the current laws, where if we find you having maybe tampered with your meter, or maybe used something that makes you to pay less than what you're supposed to pay, we're able to then go back 3 years and recoup all the lost revenue there. So what we also then do, Chair, especially for your large power users, is we run what you call a desktop analysis, where we identify customers. We call it customer stratification, where we look at customers and check where they should, what their normal consumption should be, and if they fall outside of that normal regime, then we actually identify them and put them up for audit. And then when we find that there are issues, then we deal with those issues, and then try to recoup or recover lost revenue. I think the other thing that I just want to talk to is the smart metering that we're embarking on. This will assist us in dealing with some of the issues that we're talking about here, Chair. And also coming with the active partnering with municipalities to ensure that what we are doing in Eskom, what is working in Eskom can also then start working in the municipalities, so that the municipalities can also start be able to pay Eskom in the process. So we'll be working very, very closely with municipalities around energy losses management, around meter tampering, around theft, to make sure that as Eskom wins and municipalities also win. Thank you very much.
Honorable Chair, just a few more questions that I will address that I missed the first time round. I think, Honorable Chair, the question was asked around the Q3 projection numbers that were used, and why not Q4? Chair, yeah, we should have put Q4 projections in, but basically the key message is we still, based on Q3, we have a similar outlook, which is very positive, that based on Q4 results, Eskom would, for the first time in 8 years, report a bottom line profit. Obviously, we are going through the audit at the moment. Chair, I want to just put one caution on this statement. We know that following the regulator's decision on MYPD6, the issue on how they treated our generation asset base, with a large component being disallowed, there is a risk of potential impairment of that, and we're engaging with our auditors on that issue. Excluding that item, we're comfortable that Eskom returns to profitability for the first time in 8 years. Chair, and then linked to that is the question is why, if we're profitable, we're not paying dividends. It's a question that gets back to we taking those proceeds and that positive performance to reinvest the cash into the business and help fund future capital requirements. So it's really invested into our capital to maintain our infrastructure and also for growth, and thereby limiting the amount of money that's required to be funded in the capital markets. Chair, a question was asked by honorable members, a few of them, they see this as business as usual. I tried to highlight the shifts we are making as Eskom from a strategy perspective. And in particular, you can see we also want to participate and play in renewables as Eskom. We haven't done this in the past. We've now got support from the shareholder and the board to do that. So that is a key area where it's a shift from our previous strategy. And in conjunction with that, Chair, around technology mix in a balanced manner, it's not only about clean coal technology. From an overall South African perspective, we need a mix of technologies as we transition and decarbonize. We would need more pump storage, and that's on our horizon to build another 1,500 megawatts of pump storage generation facility. The gas to power we've spoken about, battery storage is key. And then obviously as part of this is the entire rollout of the transmission TDP and the strengthening of the distribution environment. Embedded generation that exists from PV, etc., that the system operator has indicated that contributes to supply to South Africa's demand is in the region about 7 gigawatts that when we do have good PV, it does benefit us. We clearly see in the middle of the days we get a lot of benefits. However, it does mean during ramping up to the peak, it's a very big uptake, and that is why you need the use of peaking plant like your OCGTs and your pump storage to help balance the system and the frequency. Chair, we take note of the members' input and proposal that Eskom must consider this issue of dealing with registrations and how we can support as well. We will take that back to distribution to consider that. It's a good suggestion. The one point that was raised as well is, yes, the bid windows, we have seen the renewable prices come down from bid window 1, and that does come through in the overall recovery from the regulator. However, there must be an appreciation that the significant high prices that were paid for bid window 1 and 2, those PPAs last for 15 to 20 years, so it's still baked into the overall price. That is why when we do the weighted price for renewables, it's still over 2 Rand per kilowatt. That's disclosed in our financials. Also to highlight that correctly, as the member has said, we have winter and summer tariffs. We do make the higher revenue in winter, 1, because of the tariff, and 2, because sales volumes are much higher due to the weather conditions. And then obviously we see primary energy costs following that. We can then supplement this with a more detailed breakdown and including the numbers on both components. I think the other point around affordability of the price that was asked, honorable members, the point I was highlighting, yes, we must recover the efficient operating costs and effectively what comes through as the IPP pass-through costs. But there's a key component that does impact on the price in terms of the regulatory formula, which is the recovery of the cost of capital. And that is linked to the returns that we are allowed to earn under the MYPD methodology. In MYPD 6, yes, as Eskom applied, the regulator has allowed that to increase 4% in the first year, 5% in the second year, 6% in the third year, but it is below our cost of capital that averages about 11%. So I thought I'd put that on the table. And I think there was one question around JET and the JET pledges, and have we utilized that? To date, we've just had a small component of grant funding from the JET pledges that we've utilized. Yes, correctly so, a large component of that is earmarked for the transmission development plan and rollout, also a component linked to repurposing and repowering of generation. But based on that originally $8.5 billion pledges that increased to about 11 billion, we have not tapped into a large component of that yet. There's one more question on smart meters. Maybe, Chair, let me leave it there, and if there's a second round, we can then answer the rollout of smart meters. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, CFO and the team. And I saw 2 hands. Honorable Chavelin was kicked out by the network, so I'm not sure if he's back. He will ask his question.
And Honorable Kamet.
Honorable Chair.
Honorable Chavelin and Honorable Kamete raise their questions, and then we will have the responses in writing. Mr. Mashile will have the responses in writing. If that is in order, to you, Honorable Chavelin.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chair, and the opportunity to really raise a pertinent question to the committee. One is the questions that we wanted to address to is with regards to the current crisis that is facing Eskom. Eskom has an income crisis on the basis that it's subsidizing a lot of its income towards IPPs. And as a result, it cannot see its own operations needs. And with regards to that, it's causing a lot of problems right now within the Eskom entity. And really not much has been explained as to how Eskom is planning to survive through this particular crisis. That's number one. The other issue of it is, how do we then have trust when Eskom is going through this income crisis, whereby you have IPPs who are almost eating around almost 40% of the real revenue and income, and they're not producing even 10% of Eskom's electricity revenues, which is paid for by customers. And we feel that we're not being told the truth. Eskom is not giving us a full picture, and the whole thing is mashed up in what comes in from Treasury as a support scheme, and then the other issues. That's really question number one. The other issue that we feel Eskom should be open about is, why is Eskom still going ahead with the decommissioning of power plants when we know that the IRP has given the opportunity for Eskom to renew and extend the life of plants through the current technology called HELE, high efficiency and low emissions technology, whereby you can retrofit those power plants and extend their use, and you don't have to now even put South Africa into another cycle of energy crisis. When you're shutting power plants down, by 2034, we will have 7 power plants shut down, which equates to about 12,000 plus megawatts of coal power plant, capacity. Where is the rationale when technology has moved so far? You can have clean technology today being utilized, and that technology is one of the best in the world. I mean, we have technology called CFB, which is circulating fluidized bed boiler technology, which can be used. You have the HELE technology that is currently available, used by Kusile as a power station that has demonstrated that you can create clean coal power energy, and you can make sure that the environment is saved and everything. So there is a disjuncture in terms of what we are being told and what is reality. But it looks like more than anything, the push is to just shut down power plants and make sure that South Africa is starved of its electricity production. On another question I wanted to raise is the question of the current load reduction crisis our communities are experiencing. You go across townships, there is power for days, there is no power or electricity for days continuation, where Eskom is supposed to be providing this electricity, but through load reduction plans, you don't have the power capacity. The other issue is sometimes there's unscheduled power interruptions through all sorts of disruptions, whether a cable has been stolen and everything. And I can give you a couple of ideas in Johannesburg alone. You have an area of Mamelodi that gets mostly without calls for a week or two at times, without electricity, because there has been power or load related interruptions, etc. That is causing us major problems within our communities, because as representatives of these communities, we are seen as people who are not performing. So when Eskom cannot provide the service, whether the excuse is at the municipality level or within Eskom, this is something that should be brought into line and ensure that there is some reliability in Eskom's ability to guarantee this power and to guarantee electricity. You have Mamelodi, you have areas in Pretoria, East as well as West, where there is problems on power supply completely. You have areas like Hanyeju that are not currently serviced. Eskom has a weekly power shutdowns for days on end, and this is becoming a major problem. And this for us is not satisfying to say that yes, Eskom is performing, there are issues, but on the quality of services provided, there is a major crisis there. The issue of municipality debt and these discussions that have been ongoing, over the other boards that we have, for instance, the Portfolio Committee of Electricity, we've done oversight. We've sat with the departments, all combined, including the Department of Electricity, the Department of Minerals, we sat with the Department of Treasury, we sat with all the departments, and we sat with Salga, Kokta, and all of them. And we said this issue of municipality debt, which is currently increasing to almost 100 billion. What can be done? A simple compact was arrived at to say, here we can do this XYZ in order to solve this particular municipality debt. but none of it has been acted upon. We still have a crisis. We still have a situation whereby Eskom is owed and these municipalities are still defaulting. Treasury has not released some of the instruments to pay back and to help in terms of subsidizing the failing municipalities. Not only that, there is an agreement which was put into place to say, why don't you start stipulating to municipalities that are currently charging our customers prepaid electricity use? They have this money in advance, force them to give you their prepaid portion of their electricity upfront so that you're no longer carrying them on a debt basis. They already have paid for their electricity in advance from Eskom, and you're reducing their debt book. And these are some of the alternatives that should have been actually pursued, but it seems like from portfolio committee to another, the same story within Eskom keeps repeating, which means Eskom is failing itself in its own debt collection program. There is no strong debt collection program which aims at ensuring that you can collect this debt and you can make sure that South Africans do not suffer the kind of lackluster service delivery because there is no money to provide for these resources. But in overall, Eskom is currently hemorrhaging due to the cross-subsidization of IPPs. Can't Eskom talk to Treasury to say separate the IPPs from Eskom and leave us with our current revenue for the coal energy and electricity that we are producing, and we get paid for that tariff? The requirements and the long-term debt that is being carried on from IPPs for the 20 years should be shifted to a Treasury balance sheet, and it should not be made a Eskom problem. This is where the biggest issue around Eskom arises. And we don't see this kind of solutions coming in. We will have one portfolio after another with no solution. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. We appreciate your questions, and I've given you this opportunity to take your time because of the importance of the Eskom as an entity to our communities and the challenges thereof. The next and the last Honorable Member to be on the platform is Honorable Gamete. Honorable Gamete.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm sorry, I think the line was very bad. That is why I ended up being kicked out from the meeting. Okay, no, I couldn't agree more. First of all, let me just appreciate the time and also the presentation by Eskom, and also greet you formally, all of you members. Chairperson, thanks for the opportunity. I couldn't agree more with my fellow colleague, who's also a comrade to me, the latter speaker, on the issue of when it comes to this profit and gains. Because for me, this thing of privatization of Eskom, it's quite disturbing at times, because Eskom is one company which has has got three divisions: generation, distribution, and also transmission. But we ask ourselves, to which company will the debt go if now Eskom is privatized, and also how will the debt be allocated between these companies, and will the private sector take over all the debts? But I think it's just a take home to for Eskom. We have already done the presentation in support of what my fellow comrade was also asking. The presentation effectively outlines Eskom's strategic shift toward a competitive and sustainable company, showcasing a positive trajectory in financial and operational performance during the financial year end of 2025, the financial year 2025, including a significant reduction in diesel spend and improved supply availability. However, the escalating municipal debt and persistent illegal connections continue to pose substantial risks, indicating that while internal performance is improving, externally systemic challenges remain critical hurdles to long-term sustainability. Honorable Chair, my first question would be that, given that the original 70 billion debt takeover arrangement has been replaced by two advances totaling at 50 billion, The first 40 billion in 2025-2026 and the 10 billion in 2028-2029 financial year. And considering the financial and fiscal commissions concern about the lack of transparency regarding the initial 70 billion debt takeover, what are the potential implications of these of this revised approach on long-term fiscal credibility and public trust, especially since the proposed changes still result in 20 billion reduction from the original allocation. My last question will be to the document states that the proposed amendment reflects some improvement in utilities financial position flowing from the interventions to date, and that the original debt relief amount has been reduced from 254 billion to 230 billion. What specific evidence beyond stated improvement should Parliament be seeking to scrutinize to ensure that the reduction is sustainable and that Eskom is truly on the path to operate sustainable without continued national budget transfers, especially given the history of the utilities solvent and also the liquidity challenges. I'll stop there, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member, and thank you very much for the questions that are enhancing our capacity as the committee to play our oversight over the performance of Eskom as we work together to resolve the problems. Honorable Members, I think we have reached and exhausted the question time now. We will therefore release the members of Eskom, but I'm urging the members of Eskom to please respond to the questions in writing, the questions that have been posed by members, and maybe other questions that might have not been covered in the first round of questions. But the CFO and your team, thank you very much. We do appreciate that you've made time to come and do this presentation and capacitate the members with more knowledge for the members to play oversight. Honorable members, with the powers vested in me by Honorable Chair, Honorable Maimane, I would propose to the members that we consider the set of minutes. We were supposed to consider the two sets of minutes, the 27th and the 28th of May today, and I would propose that we consider them in tomorrow's meeting, those two sets of minutes, and assuming that members have read the minutes. So if we could approve them tomorrow in our meeting. And as I say that, colleagues, I would also make an announcement that tomorrow we have a meeting with the two municipalities as per our schedule at 9:30, and the meeting will be virtually, colleagues. If we could connect exactly at 9:30, considering that tomorrow is also a sitting and the debate on the fiscal framework. So everyone will have to be at the venue of the City ICC for the plenary meeting. So if we can start on time at 9:30 tomorrow, and considering that we'll be considering these two sets of minutes. With those words, colleagues, I want to, as I thank Eskom, I also thank yourself and your participation and the questions you have posed. Thank you so much. The meeting is adjourned.
Long live the chair.
Thank you so much,
Siyabulela.
Chair and colleagues. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, honorable members.
Chairperson.